She was just a number, until the human stepped into the auction. The slave auction began like it always did, cold, loud, and full of cruelty. Dozens of aliens gathered in the dark chamber of Veltron Station, a place where lives were sold like tools. Bright lights hung above the metal stage and cages lined the walls. Inside each cage sat someone with fear in their eyes. In the last cage sat Zira. She was small, her skin a soft shade of violet. Her silver hair was messy and her arms were chained. She didn't cry anymore, not after so many days, not after so many lost faces. She had learned something here. Tears meant nothing. A tall alien with green scales shouted from the center of the room. This next item is rare, healthy, age 20, no damage, bloodline unknown. But you will not be disappointed. He turned and pointed at Zira's cage. Item 47. The crowd leaned forward. One alien merchant whispered, "She looks soft." Another said, "I could train her to obey." Zira's heart pounded. Her breathing became tight. She had heard stories about what happened after someone was sold, and she knew where she would end up if no one stopped it. The guard opened her cage. "Stand up." Zira didn't move. He yanked her forward, dragging her to the center stage. Her legs shook, her arms burned. The auction master spoke again. "Starting bid, 5,000 credits." Voices rose. Bids came quickly. "Dag 200, foot 500, 6,000, Zira." Looked down at her feet. The floor felt like fire. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Please, someone, help me." Then, a new voice spoke. Calm. Clear. Human. "I claim her." The room froze. Zira's eyes opened. A man stood near the back of the crowd. He was tall, wearing a simple jacket and travel boots. His face was tired but firm. A human, rare to see in places like this. The auction master frowned. "You what?" The man stepped forward. "I said, I claim her. As mate." Gasps filled the room. One merchant shouted, "That's illegal. She's not bonded." Another growled, "You can't just claim her without proof." But the human didn't flinch. He walked up to the stage, looked the auction master in the eye and said, "Your station respects bonding laws. If she agrees, she's mine. No sale." Everyone looked at Zira, the girl who had been just a number. Now, the center of a storm. The auction master stepped close to her. "Well, girl, speak. Do you accept the human as your mate?" Zira trembled. This man, this stranger, was her only chance. She looked into his eyes. They were not cruel, not cold, just steady, and for the first time in many weeks, she saw something. Kindness. She nodded. "Yes," she said softly. "I accept him." The auction master growled. "Then get off my stage." Chains were unlocked. Guards pushed her forward. The human reached out and helped her down. Zira stumbled, weak. But he caught her, held her steady and whispered, "You're safe now." The crowd behind them shouted, some cursed, others called for a refund. But the human didn't stop. He walked away, slow and calm, with Zira by his side. The guards didn't dare touch him, because now she was no longer a number. She was claimed in the quiet hallway beyond the auction room. Zira finally spoke. "Why did you do it?" The human looked at her. "My name's Callan," he said. "And I don't like seeing people treated like cargo." She blinked. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to." He handed her a small cloth to wipe her face. "We'll talk soon. But first, let's get out of this place." Zira followed him, still weak, still afraid. But now, she had hope. And somewhere deep in her heart, something whispered. Maybe this human was more than just kind. Maybe he was her way out. He claimed her in front of everyone. Now they're both in danger. The metal doors slammed behind them. Zira flinched at the sound. She and Callan had just left the auction room, but the danger hadn't stayed behind. It followed them, in whispers and stares and footsteps that didn't match their own. They walked quickly through the dark halls of Veltrin Station, passing shady traders and drunk guards. Every step Zira took felt heavier, even without the chains. She wasn't sure what scared her more, that she was now free, or that it could be taken away at any moment. Callan didn't speak. He kept his hand gently on her back, guiding her forward. Calm, focused, Zira finally asked, "Where are we going?" "My ship," he said. "Dock 3B. Zira stopped. "You have a ship?" He looked back and smiled a little. "You think I walked into a slave auction with no exit plan?" She stared at him. This human wasn't like anyone she had met. But just before they reached the next corner, Callan's face changed, serious, alert. He pulled Zira into a side tunnel and pressed his back to the wall, pulling her gently with him. Zira held her breath. Then she heard it too. Footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Not guards. Soldiers. Callan whispered, "They're coming for you." Her chest tightened. I thought once I was claimed." Callan nodded. "You're safe by law, but laws don't scare the rich. That merchant you were sold to, he's not used to losing. He'll send people to take you back, quietly." Zira felt her legs go weak. She pressed herself against the wall. "I don't want to go back. Please, I can't." Callan looked at her and said firmly, "You won't." Then he reached into his coat and handed her a small glowing disc. "What is this?" she asked. "Emergency shield. If anyone grabs you, press the center." Suddenly voices echoed down the corridor. "Search all docks. Find the girl and the human. Alive if possible." Callan grabbed Zira's hand. "We run. Stay with me." They darted down the side passage, hearts racing. They didn't go toward Dock 3B, that would be expected. Instead, Callan took her deeper into the station, through cargo tunnels, steam vents, and old maintenance paths. Zira followed without question, because in that moment, she believed something strange. This human was risking his life. For her. They stopped in a dark corner behind a vent grate. Zira leaned against the wall, shaking. Callan reached into his backpack and handed her a bottle of water and a protein cube. She took them with trembling hands. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "You don't even know who I am." Callan looked at her seriously. "I know who you're not," he said. "You're not a thing, not property, not item 47. That's enough for me." Zira lowered her eyes. Her voice was quiet. "They said, if no one bought me, I'd be given to a merchant who breaks his girls. Some never came back." She took a deep breath. "So when I saw you, I just said the first thing I could. Claim me." "I didn't think you would." Callan gave a soft smile. "I've seen a lot of bad things, but watching you stand on that stage, silent, trying to disappear, that was worse." He paused. "So, I stepped forward. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Zira said, "Back in that room, and when I accepted you, I didn't really know what I was saying." Callan nodded. "That's okay. But now," she added, "I do." They locked eyes. Something unspoken passed between them. A thread stronger than fear. Not romance. Not yet. But trust. The kind that only forms in moments like this. When life hangs by a thread, and someone chooses to hold it for you. Suddenly, Callan's comm-bead buzzed. A voice crackled through. "Dock 7A is clear. Rerouting launch codes. Move fast." Callan stood and offered his hand to Zira. "Let's go." Before they realized, we doubled back. Zira took his hand. Her grip was firm now, and as they ran through the smoke-filled corridors past lights and alarms, she no longer felt like a number. She felt like someone who mattered, because someone had fought for her, and she had chosen to run toward life, not away from it. The truth about her value, and why the merchant wanted her. The stolen ship moved quietly through space, slipping past the station's sensors. Zira sat near the back, wrapped in a worn blanket. Her hands were still shaking, but her eyes were clear. She was alive, and she was free. At least for now. Across from her, Callan checked the control panel. His face was calm, but his mind raced. Who had the merchant really been, and why was Zira so valuable? No one sent guards after a simple runaway, unless she was more than just a slave. Callan opened his sat bag and pulled out a small data reader. He turned to Zira. I took this from the merchant's table before we left, Zira blinked. You stole from him? Callan smirked. Let's just say, he wasn't looking. He tapped the screen. A file appeared. Subject: Zira type, Psi-tier variant, status, biomarked note. Neural response to energy grids confirmed. Asset must be controlled before transfer. Zira's face went pale. She whispered, They knew? Callan looked up. Knew what? She closed her eyes, took a breath, then said, I'm not normal. I can feel machines, sometimes even control them. When I was a child, they tried to test me. I shut down an entire station grid by accident. Callan leaned back, stunned. You're a Psi-tech? Zira nodded. Half-blood. My father was from the Terran sector. They used to call people like me conduits. I didn't even know what that meant until the merchant found me. She looked away. I thought I was broken. That's why they chained me. That's why they wanted to sell me. Callan's voice was quiet. No, that's why they feared you. Zira sat up straighter now. They didn't want a servant. They wanted control. I was property to them, but also a weapon. Callan stood and began to pace. They would have used you to power ships, break into systems, even shut down cities. You weren't being sold for pleasure. He looked at her. You were being sold for power. Silence filled the ship. Then, Zira said softly, I always thought I was a mistake. Callan shook his head. No, you're a key. They jumped to hyperspace. Outside the window, stars stretched into lines of light. Zira stared at them. I never asked for this gift. Callan replied, Gifts don't ask permission, but now you get to choose how to use it. Later, as Zira rested, Callan copied the merchant's full database into a locked drive. He didn't trust anyone else with it. Not yet. Because Zira wasn't just a girl who escaped slavery. She was something bigger. And now, she was his responsibility. But in the far distance, another ship received a ping, a beacon, a signal from a lost data file, and a cold voice said, Zira has been taken. Find her, bring her back, or destroy everything she touches. Because now, the galaxy knew her name, and some would come to free her, but others would come to claim her again. Guards tried to take her in the night, but the human was ready. The hidden moon of Avon 6 was quiet. No cities, no towers, just rock, wind, and the sound of distant energy storms. Callan landed the ship in a cave near the mountain base. He knew this place from an old smuggler friend. Off the grid, no signals, no trackers. Perfect to hide. Inside the ship, Zira finally slept. She had barely closed her eyes in days. Now she lay curled on a small cot, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her breathing soft. But Callan didn't sleep. He sat at the edge of the hallway, a pulse pistol in his hand, waiting, watching, because he had seen how rich merchants worked. They always came back to finish the deal. Hours passed. Then a red flash blinked on the ship's panel. Motion alert. Callan stood without a sound and looked at the screen. 3 life forms, coming fast. Not from the front, from the back vents. He moved quickly, through the ship. Disabling lights, locking doors, setting traps. He didn't want to fight, but he would protect her, whatever it took. In the sleeping chamber, Zira stirred. She heard a sharp sound, metal against metal. Then a hiss. The air shifted. She sat up. Someone was inside. Before she could cry out, a shadow moved at the edge of the room. A tall figure, armor, masked. One word left his mouth. Target located. He reached for her. Zira's scream caught in her throat, but before the soldier touched her, bang. A shot lit up the room. The guard dropped. Behind him stood Callan, pistol raised, eyes burning. I said she's not for sale. Another guard rushed in from the hallway. Callan fired again, this time hitting the engine pipe above. Steam exploded. The ship shook. Zira crawled to the corner, coughing. The last guard grabbed her by the arm. I'll take her if I have to rip her apart. But Zira's hand reached into her pocket. She hit the emergency shield disc. A blue light burst out. The guard flew back, stunned. Callan helped her up. Quickly, you okay? Zira nodded, breathing fast. You were waiting. I always am. They ran to the front of the ship. Callan locked down the system and blasted the rear vents shut. Smoke filled the back corridor. He turned to Zira. We can't stay here, they found us. Zira grabbed his hand, her voice trembling but firm. Then we go somewhere they can't. Together they lifted off. The moon disappeared behind them. And far below, a broken helmet lay on the rocks, still glowing with the mark of a merchant family that didn't like to lose. Inside the cockpit, Zira stared at Callan. You didn't sleep all night. I didn't have to, he said. Why not? He looked at her. Because I knew they'd come. She touched her shoulder, where the guard had grabbed her. Her voice cracked. If you hadn't been there. He cut her off. But I was. And that was enough. For now. They fled the station and faced a new threat in deep space. The stars stretched around them like glowing rivers as the ship tore through hyperspace. Zira sat in the co-pilot seat, her eyes fixed on the dark screen. She was quiet, but not afraid. Not anymore. She had survived the auction, survived the station, survived the guards, because Callan had stayed. He wasn't like the others. He didn't protect her to own her. He protected her because he chose her. And now they were flying towards something new. But peace never lasted long. A warning light blinked on the dash. Incoming signal, tracking lock. Detected. Callan's jaw tightened. Zira asked, Another bounty hunter? Worse, Callan said. This one's not trying to capture. Zira's hands gripped the edge of the console. Then what? He looked at her. They're trying to erase you. Moments later, a ship dropped from hyperspace behind them, sleek, black, sharp as a blade, no flags, no name, just weapons. It opened fire without warning. Explosions shook the hull. Zira screamed, falling forward. Callan pulled her into his seat and turned the ship sharply. Strap in. She fumbled with the belt, her heart racing. Another blast hit the side. Warning lights flared, shields down to 12%. Zira grabbed the control panel. I can help. What? I can feel their systems. Their targeting feed. Give me the nav relay. Callan didn't question it. He rerouted the ship's nav grid to her station. Zira closed her eyes, breathed deep, then reached out, not with her hands, but with her mind. In her head, she felt metal, heat, signals, the hunter ship's fire control. System blinked like a heartbeat. She touched it, interrupted it. A moment later, the enemy ship's cannons went dark. Callan's eyes widened. What did you do? I overfed their energy loop, she said calmly. Their weapons are offline for now. He grinned. You really are dangerous. Callan used the window to launch a decoy pod and took a sharp turn into a meteor field. The ship slipped through the rocks while the hunter struggled behind them. Zira's voice shook. They won't stop. I know, he said. But we keep running? No, Callan replied. We stop hiding. They landed on a rogue asteroid and shut all signals down. Callan handed her a drink and sat across from her. Today you saved us. Zira looked down. I used to be scared of this power. But now. She looked at him. You gave me a reason not to be. Callan leaned forward. You're more than what they said you were. Zira nodded. So are you. They didn't speak after that. They didn't need to, because deep space was silent. But between them, something was beginning. She asked if his claim was just words. His answer changed her forever. The asteroid cave was quiet. No lights, no noise, only the soft hum of the ship's sleeping systems and the heartbeat in Zira's chest. She couldn't sleep, not because she was afraid, but because of the question burning inside her. She walked softly into the cockpit. Callan sat in the pilot seat, half asleep, a jacket draped over his shoulders. He opened one eye when he heard her steps. "You okay?" She nodded, then sat down beside him and asked without looking at him, "Back at the auction, and when you said you claimed me, did you mean it?" Callan straightened slowly. "What do you mean?" She kept her eyes on the stars outside. "You didn't know me. You just said it. Was it a trick? A way to stop the sale?" Callan didn't answer right away. Then he said gently, "No, it wasn't a trick." Zira turned to him, eyes searching. "But you could have walked away. You had no reason to stay." "I had one," he said. She waited, and Callan continued. "I saw someone who needed help, someone who wasn't asking for pity. Just a chance." Zira looked down at her hands. "I thought, if I offered myself, maybe you'd pretend. Maybe I'd be safe. But now I'm not sure where pretending ends." She looked back at him, and where the truth begins. Callan leaned forward, voice low but clear. "I've seen a lot of people pretend, Zira. But not you. Everything you've done, how you fought, how you stayed strong, how you trusted me, that's real." He reached into his pocket, pulled out the small piece of chain that once held her auction tag. "I took this off the moment we left. You're not anyone's property." Zira's voice shook. "Then what am I?" He smiled. "You're someone who's free to choose. That's more than I ever gave anyone." Tears touched the corner of her eyes. "I don't know who I am without fear." "Then let's find out together," he said. She stood, took a step toward the exit, then paused, turned back, and whispered, "If I asked you to claim me again, not for safety this time, but for real, would you still say yes?" Callan didn't speak. He stood, stepped closer, and gently took her hand, then said, "I never stopped meaning it." Zira let out a slow breath. Not fear, not pain, just release. She nodded once and for the first time smiled fully, not because she was hiding pain, but because something deep in her chest finally felt safe. That night they sat side by side saying nothing, staring into space. No guards, no chains, no cages, only stars, and a bond made not by force, but by choice. Once sold like property, now she walks beside him as his equal. The stars of the human colony glowed soft in the evening sky. The ship landed quietly on the outskirts. No welcome party, no noise. But to Zira, it felt like the loudest moment of her life. Because she wasn't arriving in chains. She was walking on her own 2 feet. And beside her walked Callan. People stared as they entered the small colony square. A few whispered, "She's not human. Is that the girl from the bounty list?" But no one dared speak louder, because the way Callan walked, with steady steps and calm eyes, told them one thing. He stood with her. At the administration post, the officer frowned as he read the scanned ID file. She was tagged by a merchant. "Guild, you know what that means, right?" Callan nodded. "She's not tagged anymore." The officer looked at Zira. "Are you with him willingly?" Zira stepped forward. "I'm not with him," she said. "I walk beside him." The officer looked between them, then nodded. "Welcome to Port Greth." They were given a small house near the hilltop. Nothing fancy, but safe, quiet, peaceful. That night, Callan cooked old ration stew while Zira sat by the window watching the stars. He walked over and handed her a bowl. Still okay being stuck. "With me," she looked up, eyes glowing softly. "I was never stuck," she said. "I chose." Later they walked outside together. The wind was cool. The stars above were bright and endless. Zira took off the thin metal chain from her pocket, the one that once held her auction tag. She threw it into the fire pit, watched it melt. Callan asked, "Feel better?" She nodded. "That name is gone. I don't need it anymore." "What name do you want?" Zira thought for a while, then looked at him with a small smile. "I want mine. Not one given. Not one stolen." He nodded. "Then we start there." In the days that followed, they worked, together, fixed broken cables, planted crops, helped the village repair its signal towers. Some people still looked at her with curiosity, or fear. But others began to smile back, because she didn't walk like a weapon anymore. She walked like someone free. One evening, a child ran up to her and asked, "Are you his?" Zira smiled, knelt down, and answered gently, "No, he's mine, too." And from that day on, no one called her a slave. No one called her a tool. She wasn't a number, or a project, or a sale. She was just Zira, and the human who once claimed her to save her. He no longer walked in front. He walked beside her, every day as her partner, her protector, her equal.